Amazing. All right, we are live now. It would be amazing if somebody on the chat could say, drop a message. Just let us know if you could hear us. But yeah. All right, we got Alex, got Latin. Yeah, we are live, sir. We are live, and we have people coming in. Lean, amazing. All right, so let's dive into it right away. First of all, thank you very much, everyone, for jumping on the webinar this morning. It's awesome to have you all here. And so just to give you a little bit of background about myself, my name is Shaheen. I'm the founder of Xgrowth, a B2B technology marketing company helping B2B businesses with their growth strategy and growth execution. And Growth Colony is a community of marketers where we have regular events, physical events, or webinars like this, where we sit down with experts in the industry like Scott and talk about a variety of different topics around growth, marketing, and sales. So today we're joined by Scott to talk about scaling a business, especially in the service industry. How would one go and create systems in order to scale? But before I jump in and start the webinar, Scott, it would be awesome if you could give us a little bit of background about yourself and what you do and how you got here.
Thanks, mate. Very happy to be here and pretty excited to talk about the sort of reasons why you'd systemize your business for scale and actually give everyone a couple of pointers to do that. Mate, I can hear you. We're all good. Can you hear me? Can everyone else on the call hear me?
It's Scott.
Yep, everyone can hear me. It's just you. It's just you, mate.
Right. I, for some reason, can't hear
your
you.
Your video's gone.
But everybody else seems like they can hear you. All right. Here's what I will try to do as an alternative.
Hey, buddy.
Okay, so everybody can hear you. So I'm putting you on mic here on my phone, so I can hear you because I can't hear you.
So if you could give us a quick intro, that would be awesome.
All right, audio's back on. I think we're good. So everyone can hear me, and it's not like you're not getting a double whammy of sound. Sounds like we're all good. Technology's awesome. Let's proceed. Mate, thank you very much for having me on. As I said, excited to talk about systems, about why you systemize and the sort of things you do at different parts of the business, and how to actually get there and systemize for scale. You asked about my background. I, in a prior life, had a little digital agency, a little email marketing automation agency. We were helping small business to, communicate with their audiences at scale, and also, try to create efficiencies in their own growth trajectory. But in doing that, like a lot of agency owners, just started adding people. Just started, trying to get off the tools myself and hope that my team would work for me. And ultimately, the whole lot sort of crashed and burned because I didn't actually have the right systems in place to structure my team, to build a beautiful customer journey, a consistent customer journey, and one that was efficient and measurable. And it sort of fell apart on me. So I learned a lot of lessons in that process, rebuilt a new business that was highly systemized, and now we're actually teaching other people to do it in their agencies as well. Making sense?
Just also for those who might know what's going on, I have called Scott on my phone because for some reason I can't hear him, and I'm hearing him from the phone and then replying on the webinar. But that makes perfect sense. And Scott, one of the it's amazing to share some of the challenges that you faced as an agency owner. If we wanted to maybe dig a little bit deeper on that front, what are some of the challenges that you see people are faced now because you work with a lot of agencies and a lot of service-based companies? What are some of the challenges that you see they're facing today?
Well, very similar to the challenges that we faced in the early days of our own agency. It's sort of like when you're small and you're in a startup realm, you're bringing on team members to work for you. And a lot of times you're kind of giving them a bit of training, but you're expecting them to create the same customer experience as perhaps you did as the founder. So for a startup, the biggest challenge is that they're bringing on people and they're kind of doing whatever they want unless the right systems are in place to guide them to create the same customer experience and to do it at a high level of skill. So that was my first challenge that I had as a small business. But then as we sort of grew up to 20 people, the challenge became more about how efficient we were in actually providing that great experience to the customer. It's like, it seems to be a limit once you get sort of 5 to 10 people in the business. Not everyone in the business is necessarily an A player. There's a lot more conversations and there's sort of people, going for coffees and, maybe not working as efficiently as they can. If you don't have the systems in place to drive performance, then you start to, run into problems with loss of margin and, and some financial performance issues. But then as you grow bigger again, it becomes about visibility, about not having the insights that you need to make smart strategic decisions. So systems are sort of important entirely along that journey of growth. And it's something that I've experienced firsthand and with a lot of the businesses that we work with.
See at different stages of their life cycle, they see different areas that they need to start systemizing. But, so if a company is going through in the early stage, let's talk about the first kind of part of the a service-based business where they hit a roadblock where they need to start thinking about systemization. What are the first the first encounters that they have that they need to start thinking about systemization in your experience?
Well, really, as soon as you're going to bring on somebody else into the business. So let's start right at the beginning. Maybe you're a freelancer and you're thinking you want to grow a business and you want to start to bring on some staff. Maybe it's one person, maybe it's 2 or 3. As soon as you're thinking about trying to empower somebody else to deliver for you, that's when you really definitely need to start systemizing what you're doing. You want to start developing the steps and the processes that you want those people to follow, because you're not necessarily going to be the one on the tools doing it every day. You're not going to have direct oversight. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. I mean, we've had the same challenges the moment we were starting to look at growing and bringing team members on board. It's just, so the first question is, so how do I do this? And if you kind of don't know how, or you haven't documented it, you pretty much end up doing everything yourself. Is that correct? Is that what you encounter?
I hear this so often. As I brought on a couple of team members, they didn't deliver properly. I ended up doing it all myself anyway. Now I'm doing 80 hours a week instead of 40 or 50. So I end up winding back the team or letting them go, and then I never sort of get past that first growth stage, which is a small team of 5. A lot of people don't break through that ceiling because they just don't have the systems in place. And think of it from the team members' perspective, right? They come in, you're saying, all right, yeah, you're an expert in SEO, you're an expert in web development, go forth and do this for us. They're going to make up the best way that they think they should be doing these things based on their experience, right? They do not know your brand. They don't know the customer journey, the feelings, the flavors, the things that they should be saying in line with your brand, and the things that make you unique as an agency, right? Your system is a representation of what makes you unique, your unique selling proposition, how you deliver a service to the client. So if you're not systemized, you're really just leaving it to dumb luck that you're going to bring on somebody who's going to do a great job. And that's where people fall down.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. So what is, I'm in, let's create a hypothetical situation where I'm an agency, I'm looking at hiring the first, 2 or 3 people. What should I do? Where should I start with the systemization process? And then later on, let's talk about some of the more advanced and sophisticated systems for larger organizations. But where do I start with systemization?
Yeah. Look, great question. And I'm going to preface that by saying, let's be clear about what a system is, because I'm sure a lot of people that are on the chat right now have probably got a different view as to what a system is. Now, when I say systems, a lot of people default to technology and they think about tech platforms. Other people default to processes and procedures. Is it one or the other? Well, it's actually all of those things. For anyone who's listening to the call right now, I'd like you to write this down. A system is people, process, a platform, and a way of measuring it. I call it the 3PM model. But people following a process, using a tool or a platform, and having that measurable so we can determine if it's a success. And we're going to use that as a bit of framework throughout this little session to talk about how we systemize a business. Let me start. You asked how do we start systemizing. I've been talking about customer experience and journey, and that's actually where all of this begins. It begins with brand, which is why marketing companies in particular are really, despite maybe not being, maybe being more creative and not like being, too process focused, you're actually really well placed to be systemized businesses because you understand brand, your brand, who you want to serve, the feelings and the journey and the experience that you want to create for that avatar, that representation of your brand is going to drive the system. So this is really, really important. If your brand was, small business, fast turnaround, high volume, low cost, you wouldn't build a system that's high touch, labor intensive, sending gifts and having lots of gifts and lots of calls and so forth. It would be more of a low touch, highly efficient model. Does that make sense, Shane?
What is the ethos of that business so that then you can start that processes?
That's right. You can't start systemizing your business until you've understood the brand, right? That is your business, the experience that you want to create. So that's your first step, is you've got to work that out. Then we're going to follow that sort of 3PM model. We're going to start with process. What do we want to systemize? If we're going to bring on some team members to deliver for us, it's probably an element of delivery. So maybe it's, how to design a website or how to build a website or something like that. So that might be where you want to start. You're going to, within the lens of that experience, work out what each of the steps are to take a customer from the point that they've had something sold to them to the point that you've designed and built something and that value's been delivered. You're going to work out what all of those steps are. They can be dot points, they can be boxes and lines, it doesn't matter, but it's the process that you're going to map out first. Then you're going to add a lens on that of people. And you're going to work out who in the business is going to do each of those dot points or each one of those boxes. And you're actually building up a position description for all of those people as well. So what are the different roles? Maybe it starts with a VA taking some, sending through a welcome pack or something like that. Then maybe it goes to an architect or a strategic person to start taking requirements, then maybe it moves to more of an engineer role to go and build something out, and then onto support. You're going to map the process out, then you're going to work out who's going to do those steps. Then you're going to work out, as the next step, how are we going to measure the success of that process? So what are the numbers that we need to be capturing to know that this process has been done correctly? And I'm going to give you an example, one that we were just talking about, prior to this call, Shaheen, about sales. If you're going to map out a sales system, well, you would measure that by the conversion rate of the sales process. So are my people converting? If the answer is yes, then the sales system is being delivered successfully. Does that make sense so far?
I think when somebody looks at it from the 10,000 foot view, they look at the tip of the iceberg, and it's not clear what happens underneath. I mean, even with sales, you got that last part that somebody's interacting with you or they're trying to close you, but then there is all those other steps beneath it where there is the insight generation, there is the research that goes on, there is the cadences that is designed, and so how do you systemize that? And the reason I probably talk about this is we go through this process quite often, but that makes perfect sense in terms of especially the metrics. Now, on the metrics part, Scott, do you find that a lot of organizations might be, in the product world, they call it the vanity metric, but metrics that look good, or they on the surface level, they look like they could shed light in terms of what is happening with the process and whether the process is working all right, but they really are not that great at telling the health of the process. Do you find that happening often, or that's not really a situation?
All the time. And let's use sales as an example, because it's a really good one. A lot of people will judge a salesperson's success or a sales system success on revenue, pure revenue, right? But that does not give you the picture. That's one of those vanity metrics that you mentioned. For sure, do you want to track revenue coming in? Yes, you do. But what makes a sales system, or what indicates the health of a sales system? It's actually conversion rate. Because if maybe I'm doing a high degree of revenue, or what perceived high degree of revenue, but if it's based on an enormous amount of leads coming in that is costing me an extraordinary amount of money each month to produce, it might be that revenue is not as high as what it needs to be. If my conversion rate is high though, so let's say I've got a conversion over 50% or something like that, then I know that the sales system is doing its job of taking leads that are coming in and turning them into dollars. And all I need to do is turn on the hose at the marketing side, and revenue is going to go up naturally. So you got to look at the indicator under that drives the performance, not the result. The result of the revenue is irrelevant. Look at the indicator that drives the performance. And there's plenty of those. Lead qualification rate is the ultimate indicator of marketing. If your leads are coming in and then you've got a low rate of qualification, then all the money you're spending on marketing is producing rubbish leads. It might be producing a high volume of leads, but you're just throwing money out the window. Just as...
Okay. So we kind of defined what a process is, where you talked about brand is kind of like the overall perspective of it, and you got people kind of written down, people, process, platform, and measurement, right? So where do I start? Like, what is the first areas that a business should start thinking about systemizing, creating a system around it?
Well, going back to when do we need to start systemizing, it's typically when we're starting to bring people on, right? So let's take a simple example, like you're perhaps a web design agency, and you want to start to bring on some developers who can start knocking out the back end of your web projects. the first thing you'd want to systemize is how they're going to do that particular role, because you're getting hands off and you're asking somebody else to do it for you. So that's the first area you want to systemize in your business, is the area that you're hiring people to replace. Now, some businesses, the founder might be better off doing the work, might be better off in delivery, and they're going to bring someone in to do sales instead. And it might be in that situation that that's actually the first thing that you want to systemize. In your, in your own business, what did you find was the most important thing to systemize first?
Raised over there. The tasks that I take on are very, I probably systemize the least, but or the team as a whole systemize the least. It's maybe the delivery component that we've systemized before. It's the sales process that we've systemized. But the question that on that point I wanted to ask you is, do you think it's possible to bring somebody on board and then with that person systemize the process? Or do you feel like in the early days, the founder needs to sit down and do the systemization, have everything mapped out, and then bring somebody into that system? Or is there a requirement to look for? First of all, let's go through that question. Which one do you think is a better approach?
Awesome question, and it's going to depend on the founder. They talk about different entrepreneurs being like, you got marketing entrepreneurs, you've got sales entrepreneurs, and you've got systems entrepreneurs. I'm a systems entrepreneur, so I'm the kind of guy that writes the system and then trains the staff. But if you're a marketing entrepreneur and your best and highest purpose is generating new business, then you might not be the right person to go and kind of write a system. And if that's the situation, you want to hire, the first hire you want to get is that kind of operations manager level that knows systems back to front, can write the systems for you. You just need to bring brand. So that's why I say it all starts with brand, because that, as the founder, is the one thing you have to have. Otherwise, the systems won't work at all. And then you can get other people in the team to write the systems for you. And arguably, that also creates a level of ownership in those systems as well. So it's not a bad strategy to bring on the right person first to do that for you, if their system's inclined.
I want to also point out that if anybody has any questions in this process, please feel free to drop it in the chat box on the right, and we'll definitely go through them. On that note, Scott, when somebody is basically weighting the two, the marketer and slash founder would have a harder time creating these processes, right, versus the process-driven founder. What have you found that is like a leading indicator that if these two, the sales and marketing founder that you mentioned, if they were going to go out and hire someone who has capabilities of developing processes, what have you found that it's really important for them to look for when they're trying to hire someone and bring on their team?
Well, look, I mean, you could do a whole nother webinar on hiring correctly, but it does come down to having the right position description to start with. So maybe you don't have a fully documented process and set of procedures of everything that you're going to do, but you do need to be prepared around what the role is going to include. So you, as the founder, need to compartmentalize how you're delivering at the moment and work out exactly what you need this person to do first. I mean, whether you're selling to a client or selling to a new team member, you've got to set the expectations and manage the expectations, right? We all know that, because when we're delivering to our clients, the biggest gap is always the expectations of one or the other, right? And that's where problems happen with team members, is when you say, oh, look, it's an easy role, I want you to come in and do this, but then it ends up being something totally different. So you need to be saying, look, are you comfortable And do you have an experience or a process for creating systems? Do you have a system for creating systems? Have you created systems before? Are you comfortable creating systems in the business if I provide you with brand guidance? They're the sort of things that you're going to be asking them to make sure they're the right person. And I know things like DISC, D-I-S-C, personality or behavioral modeling is known by a lot of agencies. Are you familiar with the DISC model for assessing somebody's personality?
I have, yeah. I've looked at this and a couple of other frameworks, yeah. But I mean, if somebody doesn't have an idea, would you mind just maybe really quickly explaining it?
Top line, I would encourage you to Google DISC, DISC profiling, and it'll give you a really, really quick indication of their sort of default behavioral model. A C is someone who's cautious and very process-based. A lot of engineers, technical people, operations managers, a high C. They don't make decisions until they have all the facts, or at least enough facts. And they're usually quite detail-oriented. So whereas a D is someone who's super direct, super fast, very much more the sales kind of person. And an I is a bit more feeling-based, more emotional, and better as like an account manager or someone that's going to sort of maintain a relationship long-term. So you're looking for an ops manager, you're looking for a C, for someone who can do your own systems in the business. A C. Now,
let's talk about, because we talked about people, we talked about brand, we talked about process. Let's talk about tools and platforms. What are some of the tools and platforms that you find, when companies, and I also understand that, look, tools are not everything. There are a lot of people who have this view of tools that, hey, if we just introduce this tool, all our problems are going to go away. But that being said, and we put that aside, what are some of the tools or tool categories that you've seen are fundamental in the early stage for a company to introduce for them to create a better structure in their organization?
Well, you raised a really good point there a moment ago around, will the tool solve all your problems? And the answer is categorically, no, it won't. And even trying to work out what tool you should bring into the business, it's a bit of a minefield. There's about 20,000 SaaS platforms on the market, and about 10,000 of those are CRMs for sales. So it's a bit of a minefield. It can be really difficult to make a decision. But if you've actually worked out what your process is, how people are going to use it, and what the measurements are, you've kind of got like a requirement spec that makes selecting a product super easy. You just go to market and say to the rep, or through your own testing, can it do this, 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 and this, and can I get a report on this and this? And if the answer is no, move on. So systemizing your business, does include the tech, but you've got to start with people, process, and measurements first, and obviously brand at the top. That'll help you make a decision. When it then comes, in an agency around what tech you should buy first, again, if you're bringing people into the business to handle delivery, then a simple task management system is probably the best place to start. Something that allows you to effectively delegate and even drive that process. And that's the thing about technology, right? It's the great multiplier. It takes mundane tasks and can automate them, things like client outreach and reporting, and it can also create consistency. If you've worked out those steps and you've got a simple task management system that's telling people to do this and then that and then this in the right order, you create that consistent environment which everybody craves. And of course, you get all your reporting as well. So if you're bringing on a team to deliver for you, you want to look at task management and project management. If you're bringing on someone to sell for you, then a CRM, a sales CRM, is going to be the most critical piece of technology you can bring into the business. And that's notwithstanding accounting, which, you know, we all got to have our accounting. That before you do anything, right, you need to get email, calendar, and accounting. I'm not even going to mention those because you've got to be compliant. You got to invoice clients and make money, and you got to send emails. So
without that.
We got a question over here from Carl, which the question is, how would you source contractors and freelancers that are suitable to your existing system processes? So, I mean, it is a little bit of around the hiring component, but from a freelancer and contractor perspective, you got anything on that one, Scott?
Yeah, well, ultimately your systems actually drive your position descriptions. So let's imagine a fully systemized business first, where we've got all of our processes. We know what roles are going to do them. You look at, let's take maybe the account executive role, for instance, and you'd see where is the account executive role, what are all the process or sections of process they do. Bang, that's position description. Pull it out of that, plonk into your position description. Your brand defines the cultural elements of your position description, and then your experience is going to depend on where you are at a business, how much you can afford, and whether you want junior resources or not. So the question is, how do you source contractors or freelancers that are suitable to the existing process? You've got to interview them. You've got to have a strong position description based on your system first, and then you ask them questions about it. Are you willing to do this? Now, actually, I'm going to cover something that's super, super important. I want everyone to write this down. Your system drives performance management in your team. At home, put your hand up if you've had a team member who just doesn't follow the bloody system. You've got a system, it's written down, but they're not following it. Yep. So is this guy. All right. Your system, when somebody first comes on board and you say, here is the system, you train them in the system, and then you say, do you agree that you will follow this system? And they can sign off on it if they want, or they can just say yes, and it can be over email or something like that. Great. When they do something outside of the system, your performance management is to document that in an open journal that both of you can see. You didn't apply, you didn't follow the system. What are we going to do to solve that? And ask them to go, okay, well, I'll follow the system next time, or they'll solve it. So they take responsibility. Now they do it again. We'll go on a 3-strike rule. Why didn't you follow the system, et cetera, et cetera. You get to 3 times, they're not following the system. Handshake, thank you very much. You're not right for our business. Simple process, no emotion, no stuffing around. Your system drives the performance. I hope that answers Carl's question. I know that I got into a bit of depth there, mate, but I hope that answers it for you.
Okay, we've got another question. And Abby asks about when is the right time to bring the first employee on in the company, right? And her question goes that for an individual freelancer, the processes work really well, but how much progress do you need to be making before thinking of onboarding a new person in the team? Does it have to be enough that you can cut out? Take a cut from your own wage and give it to the first employee. Do you have any tips for, I'm a freelancer and I want to bring in a new one more person on board? When should I do that?
Before you even decide to bring someone on board, decide if you should bring someone on board. What do you want with your lifestyle? Do you want to actually create a business? Or are you quite happy earning an hourly rate, working your own hours, doing jobs for people, and making a bit of coin? You know that as a freelancer, you've got a cap to how much you can earn. But if you're charging what you're worth, that should be a reasonable amount of money. But you're working, and you're going to continue to work, and you're not building an asset. Just because you can bring on a team member doesn't mean you should. You have to make the decision first as to whether you want to create a business. Very, very different. You and I, Shannon, we both know this, that Once you're bringing on staff and you're bringing on team and you kind of become a business, the whole game changes. You need to charge a lot more. You need to have brand. You need to structure marketing. There's a whole different ball game in deciding to become a business versus just being a freelancer. And you've got to make that decision first. The second, as a freelancer, you should at least be charging double what your kind of base cost rate is anyway. And you need to be at the point where you're at least 40 solid hours of work a week and can afford to bring someone on. The first hire I ever make is not team or delivery. It's actually virtual assistant to do things like manage my email, manage my calendar, do my invoicing, do all my research and legwork. And if I bring him on for 20 hours a week at the cost of $1,000, $1,500 a month, I know my business, if I'm working the right number of hours at the right rate, is easily going to be able to afford that. And I've opened up probably 8 to 12 hours a week that I can spend on selling and growing.
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
Those are very valid points. Yeah, whether deciding whether you want to go down the business the route and also what do you call increasing your prices basically. So that makes so much. And I I'm very.
Can I just add one further point to
Please.
that? Is that when it comes to your pricing, as a freelancer, you can get away with charging $100 to maybe $150 sort of dollars an hour for your service. As a business, you have to be charging $200 to $300 an hour. And you shouldn't even be charging hourly rates at all, but that's something that comes much later when you're highly systemized. But you've got to think of it in those terms, right? You can't be charging the same amount as a business as you were a freelancer.
That makes perfect sense. All right, let's move to the next question, where Alicia's asking about agencies versus digital experts. And the question is, considering the problems with the company for their digital transformation, how do you categorize them? Hire a digital expert or work with a digital agency? What are your thoughts on that front, Scott?
If I understand it correctly, it's like, Alicia, are you asking, should I hire a freelance expert to come and help me, or should I hire a company, an agency to come and help me? And that depends on your level of business. If you're a startup or a small business, effectively you can only afford either education or a freelancer, digital expert who can come and help you, whether that digital expert's just educating you or doing some work. It's not until you become a mid-market business that you can actually afford to get a company. And this actually goes back to the biggest problem with agency profitability in general. And that's if you're a business, i.e. you have team members, and you're trying to help small business, you are already on the back foot because they simply don't have the budget to pay you. You've got to be working with mid-market, sort of, a couple of mil beyond. Otherwise, you cannot operate as a business. You want to help small business, stay a freelancer. I hope that answers your question, Alicia. Just put in the comments if you need me to unpack that a bit further.
Oh, I think that makes perfect sense. Yeah, when you have new team members on board, it's not anymore the fact that, hey, I didn't make enough money this month, so I'll go I'll eat out less. Now you have to think about salaries. You have a certain amount of money that goes out of the business every month, and this is that complexity. Okay. Axel asks a question that I was waiting for it to come up. What is your favorite CRM tool, Scott?
Look, I'll tell you mine, but I am going to say that different tools for different organizations. If you are a Google G Suite based agency, like marketing agency or professional services that need sales pipeline, Copper CRM is best in class at the moment, and happy to do a demonstration of that and show you guys how to use it. It's a sensational tool. If you're more product-based and selling at scale, particularly via email marketing, is more important to you, or you're more e-commerce focused or something, there are other tools like HubSpot, Active Campaign and things like that that are a bit more for leveraged selling. I hope that answers your question, Jeff. Was it Jeff? No, Axel.
Even break down the processes you do every day to a system that your future employees follow?
Yeah, great question. So, Aaron, what you're going to do to work out what you need to systemize and all the things that could be systemized is every time you do something, you're going to note it down. So you just get a notepad out or an Evernote or whatever, and you're going to say, all right, what did I do today? Well, I did sales calls, then I had a team meeting, then I went and did a website build. When I did the website build, I did this, this, and this, or maybe I did SEO and I did this, this, and this. You're going to dot point out everything that you do each day, and you're going to do that over the course of 2 or 3 weeks. And look for the consistency and the commonality till you get a nice consolidated list of everything you do each month. Then next to each one of those lines, you're going to determine whether you should keep doing it, stop doing it, because half the shit that we do, we shouldn't be doing anyway, outsource it, or get a team member to do it. And then once you work out, get a team member to do it, collect all those together. They're the ones that you go and hire someone for. Outsource, that's someone you go and hire a supplier to go and do for you. Stop, you stop doing them. And the other one, you keep doing yourself.
In our experience, what we use is Asana, and what we found that works really well, and we probably have done this really well with our content. For example, Alex is not here, and he runs he's on vacation and enjoying the weather in Spain right now as we sit here in Melbourne. But he's documented every single step for our content team. This is video creation, this is shooting videos, this is webinars, everything is documented on Asana with tasks, so that you do this first, you do that second, and third. But what I found that works well, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, Scott, is to, just like you said, go ahead and do the documentation process, but do it multiple times, because I've noticed that the first time that I document something, it is not optimal. And when I repeat the task and I go through it and I notice there are gaps in between, and I start filling those gaps. And over the second or the third process, the second or the third iteration, the process starts to become a lot more complete, a lot more robust. Do you see that iterative process as well in documentation? And also love to hear, like, how you said Evernote, how you go about and systemize, document.
Yeah, so to answer your first question, your systems are a living document. They're a living process, and they're constantly being improved. And you've got to work out what that measurement is first so that you can improve them. Let's go back to sales again, sales conversion rate. If conversion is low, either your system is not delivering, or the person who's running the system is not delivering. And based on that process we talked about earlier, you can work that out. But then you can start making adjustments. So your systemization is a constant process of improvement. You guys know this. If you're doing AdWords or something like that, you're constantly A/B testing. It's ingrained in your DNA as marketers to A/B test, look at what works, and go and do that. You guys already know this stuff, right? So you're going to constantly grow. To answer your second question, where do I collect all my thoughts? What was the question exactly? You mentioned
what tool
Evernote.
do you use for documentation and writing these things down? Is it just a notepad? You mentioned Evernote. Is there something else? Do you use video?
So yeah, I use video a lot. So it's Evernote is where I start, but it could be any note-taking tool. And I just sort of bang out random thoughts in there because it's super easy. Do it on my phone. Well, usually half the stuff I come up to just as I'm going to bed. And I'll just sort of dot out some things that I want done. And that's how a system starts. Then I map it visually in a tool called Lucidchart, but there's plenty of other mapping tools out there, but Lucidchart's a Google product, and I can draw a nice, beautiful set of steps from A to B that I want to create. I'll then, I don't really like documents per se, procedure documents. They don't get followed very often. And they tend to be, once they're written, just never used. I think video is a more engaging process. So what I do is I use a combination of my task management platform with repeating tasks and templates of what needs to be done, and I embed the video into those templates. So when they're deployed, people can then go and see what they need to do. You could use a document like a Google document as well if you're not comfortable with video.
Quite often.
Look, I'm trying to get into Wistia's soapbox because it's got a couple of cool little tools, but I got to say I keep going back to use Loom, which is just click a button, record it, copy the link, and it just is so easy. I mean, for all the challenges of systemizing your business and how difficult it'll be to write it all out, I can literally just record something and say, I'd like you to do this, I'd like you to do that, and then in this situation, I'd like you to do this. Copy that, paste it into my task template or into a document that says procedure, and bang, I'm done. No friction, as Aaron has just said in the comments. That's a good one, Aaron. If you're talking about systemizing your business and you're talking about creating a great customer experience, friction and completely eradicating it from the customer experience is a good way to go. Take notes from Loom.
But we use Loom in our sales process, and when customers are doing onboarding, so a lot of customer interaction. If we have a lot of clients that are not locally based, so when we're pitching someone and we can't get a hold of them in the meeting, it's always a video proposal that we send out and using Loom. Yeah, it's an amazing tool. Okay. We got one other question, which is, what are your thoughts on as-is and to-be business process models for systemizing?
I wouldn't bother. You're not in a corporate enterprise. Just map out what you want to happen and train people in that.
To go, well, we got one other question that came through. So, what task management platform do you use, Scott? What's your take on this?
So, as a small business, we were on Asana, and when you've got a small team and tracking of margin on jobs is less important, Asana is probably best in class. They literally hired psychologists to help them design the user experience. So you got a little dopamine hit when you tick the tick button. Asana is sensational. As you grow into a small team with sort of 5 or 6 people, managing margin on your projects and making sure that people are delivering to budget becomes super, super important, because if you have 2 or 3 projects that go over budget, you've got no cash in the tin at the end of the month, you fall apart as a business. So you stick something like Harvest on, attached to Asana to get that project accounting. But then when you get to sort of 15 people to 20 people, you've got to go up another level again, and you've got to start managing utilization and resource planning. And that's where something like a Maven Link really starts to come into play to provide a complete task management, project accounting, resource planning, and billing solution for your organization.
Very interesting, and very interesting to see how these progress as organizations get bigger. Okay. Now, I wanted to say something, what I forgot. But look, that's Maiden Link. Is that Paul?
I'll write it in chat.
All right, amazing. Thanks for that, Scott. Maven Link. Okay, so look, this has been very enlightening. Really appreciate it, Scott. We're kind of are running out of time, but is there any last points that you think it would be valuable for people who are listening to take away, and you would like to reiterate or bring a new point up?
Look, we've covered a lot of ground, and I'm sure everybody here's feeling like they've just been hit with a fire hose. So let's just sort of summarize and bring it back to the key points, right? You're going to start with brand. What is the experience you want to create? And I suppose you could ask whether you want to be a business as well. That's probably the first question versus staying a freelancer. But what is the experience that you want to create? What is the first area that we need to systemize if we're bringing on a team member? What are the steps they're going to follow to create that experience? Who exactly and what roles are going to do it? How are we going to measure it? Then go get a software platform that'll help you manage it and give you the measurements at the end. Okay, so just keep it really simple. Just follow those steps and keep doing that over and over again.
Scott, if people want to reach out to you and maybe have a chat, or they have questions, or they have more questions, what will be the best way to reach out to you?
Well, I absolutely love LinkedIn. So the first thing I'd say, I'll just put my LinkedIn link in the chat there. Come and connect me with LinkedIn, and you're welcome to ping me up with any other questions or anything else you'd like to debrief on. Otherwise, my email, scott@scalemyempire.com, is the easy way to get hold of me.
Also, thank you very much for everyone who joined the webinar. As I said, we run these very often. We're trying to aiming for 2 webinars a month and 1 actual event. Our next event is right here in Melbourne, where we're going to be talking about CX and how that relates to marketing. So we were having an amazing panel. We're having people like the ex-CMO of ASOP joining us, and a few really awesome consultants that have been in the space. So if you're in town and if you're around, definitely check that out. Check it out on our website. Check it out on Eventbrite. We're pretty much everywhere, and meet up. But on that note, thanks again, Scott. Thank you, and thank you very much for everybody for joining us.
And thanks for all the props in the chat there, guys. It was an absolute pleasure to help you all.
Thanks so much, Scott. Take care. See you, everybody.
Cheers, bye.
Bye.